Okay, good. All right, I'm going to be double mic'd this morning because we've got a live stream of this as well. So, well, what a year it's been. What a last couple of years, actually, that it's been. To say that this has been easy putting together a strategic plan during a global pandemic is just not true. It has been a pretty difficult situation because, you know, as everybody I think kind of feels, we all feel like we're just not even sure what the next issue is going to be that we're going to have to deal with. And it's been quite a journey, but we have put together the strategic plan. We put it from 2021 through 2023. And then yesterday we had a retreat of the vision board, and we kind of revised things a little bit, and I've put those in bold and italics to help illustrate the different changes that we've made, you know, being where we are today compared to when we were writing this 8 months ago or so. The way that we framed our strategic plan was really we went through a bunch of data in regards to where churches are today, where the direction is that we feel we need to go. And we came up with what we called critical success factors. These are the things that really we do either today that we need to continue to do or that we're going to need to do in the future that's going to create success for the church. And so within that framework of creating success for the church, we had 4 tenets, or what we called critical success factors. And that was the collective faith of the congregation. As a congregation itself, we need to have a collective faith that we're nurturing and that we're keeping moving forward in progression with, as well as belonging to a family of faith. Now, this is getting tweaked a little bit, and I've got it in the other slides. I didn't get this slide, but it was just from yesterday's retreat that we did this. And then we're going to have a community engagement. Obviously, our outreach into the community is important with what we do in this church. And then the just very, very basic nurturing worship message that we must have in order to be successful as a church. And so I'll break into these 4 different ones, and within each we have where we put the counsels that would make most sense to give these directions to, and then have them implement, as well as breaking them out into goals and then tasks. And so in regards to our first critical success factor, the collective faith of the congregation, this to us seemed like it was a good fit in discipleship. And we have a goal statement that by 2023, we'll have created a culture of faith, nurture, and support that meets all members in all stages of their faith journey. We foresee doing that in several different ways. We want to increase our group ministry, both in diversity of options as well as the number of participants. And we want to increase the amount of lay leaders interested and capable of leading at ELC. Part of the way that we see doing that is we need to create lists that are able to articulate what's available here at the church as small group opportunities, what they're studying, what they're organized around. And we put in here the level of faith development that are appropriate. And we don't mean to be exclusive with that in any means, but we want to be, honest with where that group is at, with what they're looking at. Obviously, we would be open to anybody but to attend, but we also don't want people to feel like this is either above or below where they're at in their faith journey. We will be developing a survey to poll the congregation on the type of small groups they'd like to see and sort of where their interests lie. And then identify what types, the additional level of small groups that we need to allow these opportunities to happen. We also want to develop a lay leader training program to help encourage members to start actually generating these small groups internally within the church, identify how lay leaders are needed for growth. And then what came out yesterday was maybe we need to consider and review a potential volunteer coordinator. Part of, I believe, the issues with getting that lay leadership is when do they feel empowered enough to start acting And do they have someone behind them to help encourage them to do so? Now, perhaps it was talked about that each position at the church could help in whatever manner, whether it's parents and students with Christy's position, or other staff members where they could be trying to help. But we also need to maybe look a little bit bigger picture and say, would it be better if we had a person whose position at the church was to be this volunteer coordinator to help organize, to help keep momentum for these for these small groups? Yes, Pastor. Yeah, the amount of work that the staff has had to do during this last 18 months is significantly increased compared to what it was before, just because it's such a different set of skills that they have to learn, that they have to start practicing, and that they have to use to engage people, where before the pandemic, we weren't really in needing that as much. And so it's really been a burden on staff. And so to ask them to take on this additional role seems like that would be pretty tough at this point. We also want to create opportunities that deepen the spiritual knowledge and self-awareness in ELC members. We would do this by revising our existing new member class to identify areas where they desire to see their faith and trust in God grow, and develop a couple of short courses aimed at those that are new to the faith, just to help people feel like they can start on that journey. I think one message or thought really occurred to me yesterday at the retreat. It's not that we're trying to attract, if we think about like a cross-country team or a track team, we're not trying to attract a number of runners that can rub sub 6 miles. We're trying to get as many people on the team as we can, regardless of where they're at, regardless of where their ability is. We want to try to have people realize that this is a welcoming church, and as many people can get on the team as possible and run their own race spiritually, but so that they realize that they are welcome in the church. And then the fourth goal under this critical success factor is to evaluate the reconciling in Christ process. This is a commitment to continue that RIC process, and I believe we're moving through that currently as a church. I'm probably the wrong person to ask about this, but it's, to my understanding, it's reviewing and looking at sort of the history of not our church specifically, but the spiritual direction of the Christian church, and recognizing that there's love for everybody, regardless of their sexual orientation, of their gender identity, and trying to work through that process as Christ would work through it, and basically create more openness around faith in the person rather than the position that a person might view or be in. I don't know if there's a better.
One more thing, the process will only continue as far as the financial tools come to that.
Sure, it's a process that you kind of go along, and it moves as far forward as the church is willing to take it. The second success factor, instead of belonging to a faith family, a family of faith, we've reworded this as of yesterday to connecting to a family of faith. As a church, we are a family, but within the church, we probably have smaller groups, and that we want to make sure that everybody feels a connection to a faith family within this church. And it might be different families, that's fine. It might be the whole, but we just want to make sure that there is that connection for anybody, regardless, again, of where they're at. Our goal statement for this is that we will commit to caring for each other's physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being. Our goal is to connect and engage members, and we'll do that through a series of tasks. One, create a short course, kind of similar to new member orientation, that develops active listening skills, really as a way for members to connect with not just church members, but people in their lives that, in particular, in the past 18 months, but I think historically it's been going on, that we're becoming very divisive as a community, as a country, and just being able to understand how to connect, how to engage with one another on topics that are of interest, and yet without maybe getting too riled, or being able to have just that active listening that I think is so important today. We also want to connect and engage members by creating seasonal themes based on the liturgical calendar, as well as national and local awareness campaigns that allow all members to participate. So we would see this both with the spiritual side, as well as when it's national awareness on whatever the topic is. We're trying to follow that as well and bring it into our service and our awareness as we have our faith. Another task is to create a membership map, and that just would simply help people to see other members of the church, where they live geographically, and possibly help make connections, help strengthen connections that might not currently be there. And then again, with the idea of a layperson, we'll designate a layperson or staff to increase various social media platforms to try to get a better social media presence out there. One thing that we're realizing with COVID is that, for instance, videoed services are here to stay. After the pandemic is, whenever it's officially over, there's still going to be the video presence. And we've been receiving enough interest that it shows merit to the activity that we're doing. In fact, we need to really start looking at how is that, how professionally done is this, because we could capture even a greater audience the better that we're able to make our video presence. And an additional one, again, from our retreat yesterday, was develop a toolbox that would be basically instructions for leading and sponsoring small group activities, so that when we have lay leaders that are interested in, for instance, we did a progressive dinner a few years back where several families would meet at a certain person's house. We'd have a meal. We would then travel to another person's house of the group, have a second course of the meal. And it just was what we called a progressive dinner. Well, to put something like that on for somebody that might be interested, it would be good to have sort of a direction. How do you do it? How many people do you need to engage? Just something that kind of guides them so that they feel the confidence in doing that. And when we were putting all this together, this is during the height of COVID, and we put in that we were going to have a post-COVID celebration. And if you will notice well, you can't see it really now sitting down, but when you exit this room, there's a wall of sticky notes that are basically the fears, anxieties of the vision board and the members that were at this retreat yesterday that they felt during COVID. And one sort of collective realization that we had was that COVID isn't really going to be a finish line that we cross over and we are now free of COVID. To think that COVID is going to suddenly stop is maybe being a little naive. It's something that we're going to have to live with. It would be great if it just would stop, but it's just not the reality of it. And so we need to stop thinking that COVID ends. We just need to start a new normal. At the beginning of the Advent and the new Christian year, we will start the communion process again, where we're going up for communion. It'll be slightly different in the process or how you receive it, but you'll still be going up, standing in line, and taking communion. And I think that we need to start to see this as this is the new normal, so that we can begin to move on, this thing all of a sudden go out? It says my battery is dead. Thank you.
You can talk really loud.
All right. So we basically have to, I think, start moving on with regards to COVID and saying this is just the way it's going to be. And we'll explore support groups and other needs related to COVID experiences, because there's, I think, going to be continued anxieties regarding it. But we have to start to see that we're getting sort of post-pandemic, but it's not going to be back to how it was pre-pandemic. Our third success factor for this church is our community engagement, how we outreach to the larger community. This is shared between the evangelism and ministry councils. Our goal statement is by 2023, we'll be fully embedded into community affairs through targeted efforts for prayer, justice, inclusion, health and well-being, revitalization, and belonging. We want to, one, identify and target critical community needs. We'll use the Compass Now, which is a United Way publication that helps illustrate what the needs are in the communities. The Ministry and Evangelism Council will help identify one or two critical areas that we can direct our focus. Thank you. And then we would like to establish a fund to direct English Lutheran dollars towards these identified local critical focus areas. I think that helps the engagement. If you can see that this is happening locally, and you can see the way that your money is working in the community. Our second goal is to act and positively impact critical community needs. Again, exploring community diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. Partnerships with local nonprofits and public and private organizations that collectively address the root causes of these critical focus areas. Diversity, equity, inclusion isn't something that's going to be going away. It's not a hot topic today that will go away. And I think as a church, we need to recognize that we need to be a welcoming, inclusive church that grows membership regardless of who they are, where they come from. And we also need to identify and expand the local and regional mission opportunities to care for underserved populations and organize teams from English Lutheran to do the mission work, either one at a time or regularly as identified by the need above. And then our third goal, and I actually just spoke with Mark a little bit this morning, but evaluate English Lutheran's property and consider opportunities to enhance it for community impact. In particular, the 15th Street property to the north, what is the best use for that? And is there perhaps a community benefit that we can use it for that is beyond just student rental as it's being currently used? And then our fourth, and then I'll open it up for questions, are the inspiring worship, and this falls under the Worship Council. Our goal statement by 2023 will have English Lutheran will have nurtured a culture where members and visitors encounter God and worship both inside and outside the church walls. We hope to do that through greater use of technology, face-sharing testimonials that are embedded in traditional services, and through some of our online or Zoom formats. We will develop a monthly God's Work Today series that would be members of the church that talk about how they experience God in their everyday lives, where they see Christ working in today's world. We want to involve more lay people into the services as readers, greeters, assisting ministers, preaching, and so on, and that we should have a lay Sunday more than once a year. And it was brought up yesterday, we really need to know who we are as a congregation. Being everything to everybody would be difficult and probably not a very effective approach. But knowing who we are as a congregation is going to really help us as a congregation to articulate our message, and we can still be welcoming, but we want to make sure that we understand who we are as a congregation. Let's see here. I'll get into this thing about a greeter in a little bit, but we want to explore our worship services with respect to service offerings to meet church and community needs. We'll explore a style of services that may assist in reaching out to people not affiliated with any denomination. it was very strategic yesterday when we talked that we need to stop using the phrase nuns. The phrase nuns, N-O-N-E-S, refers to people without an affiliation. These are people that are on a spiritual journey. They're no different than us. Again, we're not trying to get a team that has X amount of people that are of a certain caliber of Christian. We're trying to expand the team. And so we want people to recognize that it's not us and them. It's not the nuns and the people that have faith. We all are on a spiritual journey, and that we all have to be welcoming, exploring ideas, and respectable of people that may not be in the same position we are in our faith journeys. We also have the goal of having worship outside of the walls of the church. And so during the summers, we're going to try to plan at least 3 summer worship services per year at various locations so that we can begin to practice our faith outside of the church. And then one idea that also came from yesterday was that we should try and create some sort of a formalized greeter or greeters that really their effort is to welcome people as they walk into the church. If they recognize somebody or if they see somebody they don't recognize, to be that contact for them, to purposely be that contact for them, because we've heard feedback that people have come that have visited and they've said, it's nice, it's a great place, but nobody talked to me for the first half hour until somebody all of a sudden said something. And we just want to make sure that we're purposeful in how we approach people, and as a church that we feel that it's our duty to really see somebody that maybe doesn't know where they might fit in, and we try to accommodate them however we can. So I'll open it up for questions. I know that's a lot of information thrown at you, but it's all helpful, I think. Yes, Pete.
Well, you had commented that our staff was taking on more responsibilities through COVID, which I would agree, and I think they've done a terrific job of taking on those challenges. Are we doing anything to show our appreciation for them, or give them an opportunity to talk and say, these are things we need to do? Any evaluations you'll have, appreciation for staff?
At the end of so the question was, how are we really recognizing staff? Are we doing any sort of listening to their needs and any sort of actions to help work with staff? We're looking at that. We also, at the end of last year, we had some sort of minor bonuses that we gave for all staff. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but I would guess we may have something along those lines again for this year. But you're right. It's getting their feedback and getting their hearing what issues they might be dealing with is very important. And so I'd say we're kind of in the process of, it's not, we don't have a formalized listening feedback session at this point, but I think that it's heard and that needs to happen. Any other questions?
It seems like mental health in general is an issue, and as I read through all of the directives, COVID has changed how we look at each other, right? So it's now you can infect me at any time, and so where I'm going with this whole thing is making sure that as we are really busy trying to go out into the community, to make sure that we have a really good pulse of our people and what their needs are, that our resources are being spent in the way that aligns with their needs. So where I guess the actual action step up of that is to say, hey, this is the direction. This is the direction that our church is going. We feel that this really would help you at where you are right now, as well as into the future. Make sure that it aligns, and then continuing to ask that.
But of members as well.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I think we did have something with regard to, I thought we had something in here sort of related to that, but that's a good point. And the point would be that not only do we need to do outreach within the community itself, but we need to do outreach within our congregation, see where people are at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but and to make sure that everybody's needs are being met, whether from COVID, other mental issues that might be struggling with. If nothing else, yeah, COVID has really illustrated that mental health is such an issue, and everybody is kind of enduring their own struggles. And I think our overall recognition of a church is that we need to be there for people. We need to create that opportunity for connection. Now, we've focused a lot with lay leaders. There may be other ways that we do that. While it's our projection as the vision board, I would say that any plan needs to have that ability to make adaptations to it as changes come across from the climate, the external to the church, as well as changes that we start to notice within the church. So I hope that even if it's not included in here, we have that freedom to recognize that if this becomes a need in the next 18 months or whatnot, that we need to act on that. Any other questions?
I just wanted to add to your statement on greeters, that not only do we need them before the service, but after the service. And I don't know if that's already talked about.
It hasn't been talked about, but that's a great point. Is to help people just to sort of, so that they don't just feel like the service is over and they're turned away and that's it.
The welcome center we have is great. When we get back, we'll have more of that opportunity, but really that's kind of a passive thing. People have to
Come to it.
Welcome center.
Right. And what we're sort of seeing the greeter as being a little bit more, not aggressive, but a little bit more active, where they're going to people, trying to seek them out if they don't recognize somebody. And we acknowledged, there was someone from staff that said they went up and said, "Oh, don't think I've met you." And they said, "Oh, I've been a member for however many years." And sometimes it feels like, because of the Saturday service and the Sunday service, we almost have two different groups. But, we just need to be, graceful in our approach and hope people appreciate that even if we didn't recognize them, we're just trying to make sure everybody feels welcomed. All right. Any last questions? Otherwise, John, go ahead.
I just would say this is a terrific looking strategic plan. Thank you guys for working on it. It really seems like it has some good chances to succeed. There was something in you mentioned faith journey, developing groups that might meet member stages of their faith journey. You made a comment about we don't want groups that are above or below, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some considerations to how to measure stages of faith journey. You do that on my own. There's some tools out there. I think what you're saying is terrific to match up. I don't want to be in a group that is either too high or too low. Judgmental way.
Correct.
Matching.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is how do we gauge that? Maybe we just try to from who are the members that we know and say, what is your purpose of this? We try to gauge, is this sort of a moderate level? Is this beginner level? Is it more in depth? And it's more that so that people feel like they fit in rather than that they feel lost. If they come in and, we're jumping into Galatians and the importance of, and it's like, I didn't even realize that was a book of the Bible. There's maybe a mismatch there. And so we want to just try to have some sort of a gauging that, again, it's not a filter. It's more of just a way for the people to feel like, okay, I'm comfortable getting into this group. And there's going to be some groups I think that would probably be more beneficial to have a range. So figuring out how do you articulate that, or how do you get that in the group is going to be hard. But I think it's a good point, is that we need to be able to gauge sort of where that group is at, and yet to be able to do it without acting as if it's a filter of members. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you later.
I think so.